1947, a three-star general named Nathan Twining looked at the evidence, and he admitted what the world wasn't ready to hear. He didn't use the word if, he used the word is. Tonight, we aren't just looking at old memos. We're touching the third rail. We're exploring the terrifying possibility that humanity isn't the apex predator, we're the property. What happens to a civilization when it realizes its advanced technology is just sticks and stones? What happens to your mind when you realize the person sitting next to you might be less real than the visitors phasing through the walls? And this isn't a documentary. This is an eviction notice for your ego. Grab your coffee, lock your doors. But remember, locking the door only works if the intruder plays by our laws of physics. So let's dive in. We've been told the moon is a dead rock, but the Apollo 12 photos say otherwise. We've been told our nuclear deterrent is secure. George Knapp's Russian dossier proved that our most advanced weapons can be switched off or on by an intelligence we don't control. And these aren't theories. These are the declassified logs of people who were actually there. This is where it gets uncomfortable. This is the third rail. Most people are asleep because the alternative to sleep is a nightmare of insignificance. When the public finally realizes that we don't have domination over our own reality, the ontological shock will be massive. Because we aren't just talking about aliens from a distant star. We're talking about what some people are referring to as interdimensional or ultra-terrestrial entities. How will the world react when they realize the fence around our planet is an illusion? Stanford's Dr. Gary Nolan, he didn't stutter when he said, it hasn't just visited. It's been here a long time, and it's still here. This isn't a visit, it's an occupancy. But why lie, you might ask? Why keep the Twining memo secret for so long? Ben Rich, the father of stealth at Lockheed Skunk Works, gave us the answer on his deathbed. He said we already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. But why? Every gas bill you've paid, every war fought over resources, it was all a choice made by a small, elite group of people who decided that keeping the secret was more important than advancing the human race. They didn't just hide aliens. They hid our future, and that's criminal. I just don't understand the logic behind it. Why keep this technology secret? Why? How come the Amy Eskridges and Mark McCandlesses, why did they have to die the way they did? But the reality is shifting. The Department of War is releasing records through Pursuit, these documents, file dumps, because they can't hold the dam any longer. The asleep are about to have a very rude awakening. And I kind of wonder how they're going to respond to this, because it's going to have an impact on society that a lot of people aren't aware of. We're no longer on top of the food chain. We are no longer the masters of the sky or even our own reality. We are finally realizing that we're just observers. While the world watched the Apollo missions as a triumph of human engineering, the internal transcripts tell a totally different story. In Apollo 12 and 17, these transcripts, the astronauts weren't just describing rocks, they were describing a presence. During Apollo 12, the command module pilot reported seeing flashes of light that seemed to be escaping the moon at high speeds, pressing off at the stars. And that's a quote. By Apollo 17 in 1972, Harrison Smith witnessed a bright light flash on the lunar surface near Grimaldi Crater. And these weren't ice chunks or paint peeling. As Gene Cernan emphasized to Houston, these were physical objects in the distance. That's a term that exhibited rhythmic, artificial flashing. As his own logs confirm, we weren't alone on the moon. This is explosive. And look, this document the pictures and the videos are one thing, but the documents and what they reveal, especially these transcripts, these NASA transcripts, reveal something startling. And not only that, but Buzz Aldrin experienced a presence inside the cabin of the lunar module. And that's just mind-blowing. In the cabin, he was seeing rods of light, orbs of flashing lights, while he was trying to sleep, disrupting his sleep. At one point in these transcripts, you can hear Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Collins trying to kind of process this shape-shifting object they saw in the distance that they thought was huge, but they couldn't really tell because they didn't know the range, so they had a hard time telling how large it was, but they said it was of considerable size. And then there's another moment where Neil was actually saying he was looking at the dark part of the moon and he actually saw what he thought was Mars, and he just couldn't figure it out, so he just chalked it up as an illusion. What happened up there? And maybe that's why that press conference is so awkward whenever you see Neil Armstrong and Buzz and Collins trying to talk to the press. And you could tell that there was a tension, that there was something that they were hiding, that they were afraid to reveal to the public, or possibly they weren't allowed to reveal to the public. While NASA was watching the moon, George Knapp was tracking the shadows on Earth. In this landmark testimony before the House Oversight Committee, George Knapp brought forward a reality the U.S. government tried to ignore: the Russian crash retrieval programs. And Knapp's sources provided a dossier on Russian UFO retrievals that reads like a technical manual for the impossible. Most chilling is the 1982 ICBM incident, where a UAP reportedly hovered over a Soviet missile silo and physically overrode the launch codes. And this wasn't just a sighting, it was a demonstration of absolute technical dominance. As Knapp pointed out, if a foreign power had this tech, we wouldn't be having a hearing. We'd be in a state of surrender. This confirms that whatever was at Apollo 12 and Apollo 17 is the same force managing our missile silos. That's terrifying. We spent 2,000 years building a world where we are the protagonists. Every religion, every government, every scientific law was written with the assumption that humans are the smartest things in the room. Twining memo and this file dump, these documents, this data, this proves we've been living in a curated bubble. And when you realize that objects are entering our restricted airspace with total impunity, shutting off our nukes, performing maneuvers that should liquefy a human pilot, the myth of human exceptionalism dies. We aren't the apex predators. We aren't even the secondary ones. We are effectively a primitive species of aggressive apes being observed by a culture that views our most advanced nuclear carriers the way we view an anthill. How do you even communicate with an intelligence like that? And for the asleep, this is the ultimate ego death. To realize you aren't the master of your house. You're just a tenant who hasn't met the landlord yet. It's a crisis of reality. And a lot of people ain't going to be able to hack it, man. Because there's still a lot of people that just are asleep at the wheel. And it gets deeper. It's not just that they are here, it's how they are here. The data coming out of this May 2026 Department of War file dump, this briefing suggests we aren't just dealing with hardware from another planet. We're dealing with a crisis of reality itself. And it's been sitting in the archives for decades. A lot of these documents are old, but when you look at them collectively, and these new ones that came out from NASA, it describes entities not from any country we know, but from an etheric planet which penetrates with our own. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Now, this is the third rail. And when you touch it, sometimes you get burned, man. If these objects can phase in and out of our perception, they can manipulate time, consciousness, then our solid world is just a thin veil. And the veil's getting thinner. Think about the many worlds interpretation or simulation theory. Are we looking at aliens? Or are we looking at the programmers checking the code? Are we looking at travelers or the very beings that inhabit the dimensions right next to yours while you sleep? And when the veil drops, you don't just lose your sense of security, you lose your sense of what is real. And that is the true cost of disclosure. And I think that's why that they've tried to keep this silent. Because once you know, you can never go back. Once you're awake, you can't go back to the dream. Have these things created this reality, or do they manage it? We're dealing with beings that are not just thousands of years ahead of us, but possibly millions. It's a humbling feeling. Think about it. For 80 years, you've been told a fairy tale. You've been told that the sky belongs to us, that our satellites see everything, that our jets are the apex predators of the atmosphere. That's not the case. These files, these documents, this revelation coming from these documents of the Apollo astronauts to the pilots, to the Iranian pilots, all over the world, the Cometa document that they sent to NASA. The truth is buried in a memo from 1947, a memo that proves the government didn't just suspect something was out there. They knew, and they knew we were helpless. They knew that we didn't have dominion over our own skies, that these beings could come pluck you out of your bedroom at any time, and there's nothing anybody could do about it. But you need to just think about this. How do you tell the public this? And I think that there's going to be a serious reckoning whenever the people who are asleep at the wheel and don't know. September 23rd, 1947, General Nathan Twining, head of Air Material Command. He wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He was the man in charge of the most advanced technology on Earth. And he wrote a classified opinion on what they then called flying discs. He said they were real. He said they weren't imaginary, that these were physical craft. And then you look at these documents and you see all these other pilots who were having interactions. You see things like the Maury Island incident where slag is coming off of this stuff. A craft appears and there's molten metal just dripping off of the thing. And now we're getting those materials and testing them, and we're realizing that these things are able to pop in and out of existence in our reality, and that our grasp on physics isn't as concrete as we thought it was. That reality is far stranger. And you look at the world today, and it almost feels like there's an acceleration. It's just one thing after another. It's either the Epstein files, Iran, Israel, Palestine, ICE, the price of gas is skyrocketing. And now these files get dumped and we see these images. But the images aren't even where the crazy stuff is. It's in the documents. Documents are nuts. If you just look at the Apollo documents, we aren't the masters of our own house. We're just the tenants. I mean, whose planet is it? I have a feeling that these things have been here all along. And then maybe they did create us, or maybe they did mess with our DNA. Maybe we are hybrids. Maybe we are the aliens. And maybe these religions, especially these Abrahamic religions, are worshiping a being that might not be God. And you look at some of the symbology, and you look at like Saturn, and on the top of Saturn, there's a hexagram. And a lot of people think that Judaism worships Saturn. The Sabbath is on Saturday, which is Saturn's day. And El, Saturn, in ancient times, was referred to as El. We have El-Leets, El-Lect. People wear these black robes. You look at the Star of David, and it has a hexagram right in the middle of it. And then you got Islam, and they always take a Hajj to the Kaaba, which is this big black cube. And a hexagram is just a black cube or a cube in 2D, right? If you look at a cube tilted in 2D, that's a hexagram. And that's what's directly on top of Saturn. So a lot of people think that these religions are worshiping something other than what we common people think of as God. Because in my mind, God is like the source of everything, right? The consciousness, the field that everything emanates from. That's God in my mind. It's not just some being or old man in the sky. It's kind of the source. And I feel like it's good, it's benevolent, and that we're just kind of manifestations of it, and that we're all kind of connected and there's really no separation between us other than that what we think we are separate, but really we aren't. That, in my mind, is God. But what are these other people worshiping? I don't know. And why is there this obsession with blood, sacrifice, things of this nature? What does that have to do with anything? And look, I'm rambling. On to the next segment. Could this be why they don't want to reveal truth about this? And is this why some insiders that are close to President Trump feel that he says, or he's afraid, he's nervous, he doesn't want to get JFK'd? And there's a lot of speculation that JFK was possibly taken out because of this subject, because he wanted to reveal this subject. And I just wonder how far Trump's going to go. David Grush says the CIA and the DIA are actually blocking a lot of the files that he wants to get released, and that if these files get released, people are going to have a, oh my God moment, this ontological shock of the realization that reality is not what we think it is. This isn't just an American secret. In 1999, high-ranking French military aerospace experts released the Cometa report. Their conclusion, extraterrestrial hypothesis, was the only logical explanation. We weren't looking at planes, we were looking at breaches. And then you got James Lukatsky, and he was a high-level intelligence official, and he told senators things that would blow your mind. Now, we come to the third rail, and this is James Lukatsky, former DIA rocket scientist, who told senators something that should have stopped the world in its tracks. The United States has at least one fully intact UFO. And here's the kicker. It has no fuel tank, no controls, no wires, no means of propulsion. But they breached it. They got inside of the thing. Now think about that. If it has no fuel, no burning energy, it has to be accessing something. And this is the 0 point. It's a craft that interacts directly with the vacuum of space. It doesn't move through reality. It's literally a part of the reality. We've been told for decades that it's all weather balloons and swamp gas. But in 1947, head of Air Material Command, General Nathan Twining, sent a memo that changed everything. And it was classified for a long time. He didn't say it might be real. He said, quote, "The phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious." And if it was real in 1947 and they knew it was metallic and controlled, why did they spend the next 70 years telling us that we were crazy? The answer lies in who was watching. And who was watching from the shadows? Were the insiders worried while the public was mocked? It wasn't just the pilots. The very first director of the CIA, Roscoe Hillenkoetter, went to Congress with a warning. And this warning should have been front page news. Quote, "Behind the scenes, high-ranking Air Force officers are soberly concerned about UFOs. But through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens are led to believe the unknown flying objects are nonsense." Unquote. Ridicule as a weapon. And they used it to keep us looking away, to keep us ignorant. But NATO's highest-ranking military officer, Lord Admiral Hill Norton, he knew the stakes were much higher. And he asked the one question the government still won't answer. How are they getting here? According to the man who ran Lockheed Martin, Skunk Works, the place where the SR-71 and the F-117 stealth fighter were born, we already have the answer. And this is a quote, "We already have the means to travel among the stars. But these technologies are locked up, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity." If Ben Rich was right, we aren't just looking at aliens, we're looking at suppressed history of human achievement or recovered technology. If what he says is true, then we have access to 0 point energy, possibly free energy. And if it's being locked up in these black projects, I think that's criminal. And you might think that this is all old news, but Stanford's Dr. Gary Nolan just dropped the most chilling quote of the decade. And he dropped this quote on the world stage. And what he said was, he said, quote, "I think you can go a step further. It hasn't just visited, it's been here a long time. And it's still here," unquote. They are still here. And on the next episode of UAP Truth 33, we're going to look at the documents they just unsealed that prove it. So don't look away.